My son looked me straight in the eye and shouted, "Either serve my family or get out of this house." And I didn't react with anger. Instead, I smiled, picked up my car keys and walked out, leaving behind the home I'd paid for with my own life. The boy still thought I'd be back soon. But this time, everything was different. 22 missed calls. That's what he made over the next week. But I had a plan of my own. They would regret their words and their actions. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I pushed the door open with my elbow, the two Safeway bags heavy as anchors. Nylon handles grated my skin, leaving two parallel red tracks across my palms. My phone was in the chest pocket. When I pressed my arm in to steady myself, my thumb slid up the screen without thinking. A red dot flashed under the fabric like a trapped firefly. The rasp of a basketball game swept through the living room, the air still tinged with beer and fried onion. Evan lounged in the recliner, feet slung over the cracked leather arm. A Corona dangled between two fingers, rocking to the announcer's cadence. "Hey, grab me another while you're at it," he said, eyes never leaving the screen. "I need to put the milk away before it warms up." I kept my voice flat. "I'm comfortable." He hit each word, not bothering to look. I set the bags on the kitchen counter. The yellow ceiling light fell over the wooden cutting board singed at one corner, a crescent burn from the time my wife set a hot pot down. I touched the board's edge. The grain felt smooth, and for a blink I heard her laugh. "Let me slice the apples, you brew the tea." The kitchen door swung, and Lena stepped in. A dish towel looped over her wrist. "What's going on?" she asked, eyes slid over me, the groceries, then stopped at Evan. "Dad's in a mood," Evan said, half joking, half dismissive. I asked for one more beer, and he acts like it's a national crisis. I pivoted, leaning a hip against the counter. "Evan, what did you just say?" I asked, hearing my own voice go strange. He snorted and stood up. His big shadow swallowed the worn shag. "Listen up, Clark. From now on, if you live here, you serve my family. You want peace? Do what you're told. Don't like it?" He shrugged. "There's the door." Lena brushed his elbow. "Come on," she said, turning to me, softening. "What he means is, we need to align roles, Dad." "Roles," I repeated. "My role is to come home, put away milk, wipe the counter, then run for beer when my son snaps his fingers?" Evan curled a lip. "Don't be dramatic, it's just a beer." "No," I said slowly, each word placed. "It's the way you said it." Evan barked a laugh. "You always make everything a big deal." I answered, "Raising a kid isn't the same as commanding one." Lena cut in, "Dad, take a break. I'll grab it." I shook my head, eyes on Evan. "I'm not thirsty." The air shattered like a drop bowl. I blinked, surprise, then a sway. Blood surged in my ears, but an invisible cord held me still. I heard the kitchen clock tick tooth by tooth, the refrigerator dripping somewhere. In my head, my wife's whisper, "Breathe." I breathed. The heat drained down, leaving a salty hollow. Evan stepped closer, beer breath rolling. "Serve my family or leave," he repeated slower now, like marking a line on wood with a ruler. "I heard you," I said, "and I also remember the day you stood in the rain waiting after practice, shaking and still smiling. That day, was I serving you?" He paused a beat, then gave a dry laugh. "Save the fairy tales. This is reality." "Reality," I nodded. "Reality is this is my house, my kitchen, the scorched cutting board my wife used." I set my palm on the burn mark. "And reality is you just told me to be a servant." Lena exhaled. "Dad, don't push this too far. We just need cooperation." "Cooperation doesn't sound like orders," I said. Then I went quiet. I noticed the wedding photo hanging slightly crooked, the one I kept meaning to straighten and never did. A cold thought slid through. If I stay, the only thing left will be silence, with someone else's hand on the volume. I reached toward the wooden hook by the door and took the Buick keys. The keys chimed against each other. My wife's photo sat on the shelf, the brown leather frame worn at the corners. I lifted it. A film of dust gripped the edge. Evan was still going on about house rules. I choose to leave, I said, even-voiced. Good, Evan smirked. Then before you... I didn't wait. I crossed the living room, boot heels tapping the wood. Lena stepped back from the garage door. She almost spoke, lips parting, then thought better of it. The garage was cold and smelled of damp gasoline. I set my wife's photo on the Buick's hood. Under the neon, her face went pale silver, but the eyes still looked straight at me. I stood there, hands braced on the hood's lip. Breath fogged the windshield, then thinned. I thought of winter nights she sliced apples on that board, the knife-tapping time, of mugs of tea poured shy of full so I wouldn't burn my mouth. I pressed the fob. The dash flicked on, a rinse of blue across the gauges. The fuel pump gave a short hiss. Inside, the TV still blared. I set her photo on the passenger seat. Let's go, I said softly. The roll-up groaned, metal scraping its track in a single drawn-out line. I eased down the drive. I glanced at the roof I'd re-shingled with my own hands. Everything pulled back behind me like a curtain closing. Ben's night was still. Pines leaned their shadows across the street. I merged onto Y97. The first gas sign was dark. A closed placard swung, hook clacking. Sodium light chewed the pavement in ragged yellow, like someone had scattered ground glass. The strip mall sat dark as a cave mouth. The tires whispered their thin river of sound. Memory doesn't arrive in order. Evan, tiny with a rubber ball, turning to find me behind the fence. Watch me, Dad. The warm kitchen on rain nights, my wife's hair pulled high. The first time that board burned, she laughed. Don't tell anyone, I'll die of embarrassment. I had said, I'll carry that secret to old age. I pulled into the island of light at another station, but its glass door was locked. I sat in that lit square for a while. The strap marks had faded, but the sting lingered. I spread my hand and looked at the small ridges of skin. People say skin remembers. I believe it. Skin remembers jasmine tea, the tap of a knife on wood, an apology that never made it out. I started up again. Houses thinned. Only the cold flare of reflective signs remained. The tires nipped at gravel. The chassis shivered. My wife's photo tipped on the seat. I reached to steady it. Sorry, I said, then laughed at myself. The phone slid out of my pocket onto the seat. I set it beside the frame. The dim screen showed a red dot, the counter running. Rex Schurfs 05. I froze. Somewhere between juggling bags at the door and pressing my arm to my chest. My thumb must have hit record. The kitchen sounds, the serve my family or leave, and the sound of me breathing steady were all inside this thin little machine. I looked at the road ahead. The headlights split a low sash of ground-hugging mist. Pine Motel appeared after a bend, a neon vacancy winking red and green. I turned in. The small lot's paint was flaking. A few pickups slept under the lights. The office glass said, "Ring bell for service." I rang. The bell chimed into the cold. A middle-aged man opened up, sleep still smudging his eyes. He slid the register toward me. The cheap ballpoint ticked as I signed. He handed over a key on a green plastic fob. Room 12, cold night, heater's a little slow. Coffee in the lobby in the morning. Thanks, I said. I carried the bag, lighter than when I'd walked into the house, down a hallway of worn patterned carpet, bleach and damp fibers in the air. Room 12 opened with a dry click. I switched on the bedside lamp. A generic mountain and river print hung on the wall. I set my wife's photo on the small table below the TV, angling the frame toward the bed. The phone lay beside it, the red dot still blinking. 2:07 a.m. on the digital clock. I sat on the bed's edge. The room didn't pretend to comfort me. It just kept quiet. I pulled my shoes off, leather whispering against the carpet. Outside, wind braided through pines. Some distant door creaked. My stomach murmured. The dinner left half finished on the counter. The milk probably warm now. Tomorrow I'll buy another gallon, and I'll put it in a refrigerator that doesn't talk in commands. I hadn't hit stop. Maybe because I was afraid to snap the delicate thing that had just fallen into my hands. The truth. Maybe because I needed to hear how calm I stayed while I was pushed out of the kitchen of my life. I leaned back against the wall, closed my eyes, and still saw the red dot pulsing through my lids like a firefly. I opened them and turned the phone face down so the red wouldn't glare. I looked at my wife's photo. "I'm sleeping here," I told her. "In the morning, I'll put the milk into a different fridge." In the dark motel room, the phone screen threw a faint blue edge across the table. Under the plastic, the recording kept running. The wall clock hopped to 2:15 a.m. I exhaled, long and slow, and the door inside me clicked shut. Quiet. Sunday morning opened with the old AC breathing evenly in room 12 of the Pine Lodge. I sat at the wooden table by the window and laid my papers out in strips. Safeway receipts, a Pacific Power bill, bank statements in black ink, a few sheets dog-eared like they just walked out of a wallet. Ben's gray light poured a cold streak over the manila folder and ran across a line of handwriting. Things I paid for. On the TV shelf, my phone lay face up. Last night's recording had been renamed and backed up. Rakichar, serve, Nestor leave, wo one. Sitting on the edge of the bed, my every morning habit, I suddenly remembered Evan at 4, hugging a rubber ball in both arms, barreling into the kitchen, slipping, going face down, then popping up grinning around a gap-toothed smile. My wife with her hair tied high, polka dot apron, setting apple slices on the scorched wooden board. The knife tapping time. "Your son takes after you," grinning before he apologizes, she said, laughing. I laughed too and shimmed the wobbly chair leg with a scrap of cardboard, thinking, "I'll put a new screw in tomorrow," then forgetting. I pulled the laptop from my bag and opened it. Started a list. First call, First Cascade Bank. 3 layers of automated voices and a chunk of anonymous hold music. A rep picked up and asked for my info. I read the account number, verified my birth date and address. "I want to cancel the mortgage auto-pay, effective immediately." 2 beats of quiet on the line. "Yes, Mr. Hale. That's been active for 48 months. Are you sure?" "Sure." Keyboard chatter. "Your automatic mortgage payment is canceled, effective immediately. Coinfashash 61FA2. I repeated it and wrote on the notebook's margin, 61FA2. Second call, Geeko. "Press 2 to manage your policy." I pressed 2. "I need to remove 2 vehicles from the policy, effective today." They read the names, plates. "Mr. Hale, changes go into effect at 12:01 a.m. Cohen Fixer P4117. I wrote P4116 next to 61FA2 and stuck a green post-it to the folder's edge. After 2 calls, I stood and looked out the window, where morning sun had started to thread through the needles. My eyes stopped on the little lot across the street, where a few kids were playing catch. The picture flashed up, a dawn with just the 2 of us. In the backyard, I taught Evan to throw. He missed. I fetched. I tossed back to his glove, right at the pocket. "Keep your eyes on the mitt, not on me," I told him. He nodded, threw again, hit it. A small joy like light spearing through leaves. One blink was enough warmth. Exactly like now. It made a small sadness pass over me. I returned to the table and started the next call. Credit cards. "I want to remove the authorized user Evan from 2 accounts and 1 store card. Block new charges. Stop the first of the month transfers." The agent checked. "Removed. Cohen V033 M219 C884. You'll get confirmation emails right away." "Thank you," I said. I drew 3 small squares beside the 3 codes and shaded them in, like setting 3 nails into a board. Waiting on the emails, I opened my photo folder. Evan's wedding reception, gold string lights, white chair covers. In the corner, my wife's picture on a candle table. Back then, I wired a $120,000 down payment, thinking, this is the cleanest start I can give him. I closed the image and pulled that number into the present, like drawing a thread. From now on, that thread isn't tied to my wallet anymore. Email arrived. Mortgage auto pay canceled. Address correction completed. I printed confirmations at the front desk. The fresh ink smudged my fingertip. I filed them in the manila folder by hour-minute order, each page tabbed with a post-it, 61FA2, P417, V03, M219, C8084. The whole stack felt like a low register score. Few notes, heavy. I stood to brew a packet coffee. Water from the kettle drummed through the paper cone like a tiny rain. The smell rose. I sat and opened the things I paid for book, skimmed tuition, wedding, insurance, utilities, mortgage, nails driven true. I caught myself making the old excuse. That's what parents do. It used to help me sleep. Now it sounded like a key left in a door for anyone to come take anything. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. The motel mirror's silvering was mottled. Blue-gray crescents under my eyes, salt in my mustache. Service or leave clanged back like a pot lid hitting tile. I returned to the table, pulled a yellow legal pad, and wrote one word in block letters. Stop. I pressed the pen hard enough to emboss the next sheet. I folded the page into thirds and slid it into my wallet. No fanfare, just a shim slipped into a hinge. I continued. Called the electric company. Cancel auto pay from any account in my name. Send the next bill directly to the current user. The email confirmation landed. Conf PP72K. I printed and stapled it behind P417. Called the internet provider. Transfer billing to the present user. Stop all auto transfers from my account. Updated, the rep said. Conf Ficunch NT310. I added NT310 to the notebook margin and stuck on a yellow post-it. Cup in hand, I looked out the window. 3 cars in the lot. A dusty red sedan, a heavy black SUV, a silver pickup parked by the fence. I remembered the morning Evan learned to ride without training wheels. He toppled hard, tears running, grin still there. Again, he said through chattering teeth. I steadied the seat, ran 2 more laps, then let go. He rolled straight for a long stretch, turned and shouted, "Did you see, Dad?" I threw both arms up like a happy fool. Early afternoon, I went to the diner on Knee 3rd St., took the old corner booth. Easy listening hummed. Plates chimed. The platinum blonde waitress refilled cups with a motion she'd practiced her whole life. I opened the notebook and drew a light pencil line under $120,000. The graphite gray like a cloud streak. At the counter, an old man folded the paper to the classifieds. A beanied kid blew on hot chocolate. Everything was so ordinary I wanted to laugh at how the ordinary can save a person. The phone buzzed, 5 missed calls, then 9, then 14. I didn't call back. I dialed Marla Chen. "Marla, I need you to look at the house in the papers. 9 a.m. tomorrow?" "Yes," she said. "Bring everything with numbers and with seals. And if there's truth, even better." "I have it," I said, glancing at REC server leave 001 on the screen. I sat a while longer, letting the coffee steam. In my head, I saw a simple dinner from Evan's middle school years. Spaghetti and meatballs, salad, my wife saying, "You do the dishes after," and him dragging his feet but doing it. I remember brushing his hair and saying, "Thank you," and him shrugging, "I'm your son, Saprasui." The small things had been a brace. Over time, they turned into entitlement, and nobody noticed the slight skid until the slope went sheer. Dusk dropped fast. I got back to the motel as the hallway tubes blinked on. The landing light flickered 3 times, then held like someone deciding to stop shaking. I squared the manila folder and counted down the tabs. 61 FA2, P417, V033, M219, C8804, PP72K, NT310, 7 first nails. The phone lit again. 22 missed calls. Some unknown numbers, some from home. I opened the phone, renamed the file, REC serve or Levager 1, REC serve or leave not master, uploaded to the cloud, made another backup to the USB in the laptop. A thin green bar ran to the end. The room phone rang. I picked up. Front desk, Mr. Hale. Two odd calls came in. Someone claiming they were from a bank, asking to verify if you're staying here. We didn't confirm anything and flagged your room, do not connect. If you like, I'll add a no information release note. Please do. Thank you. Yes, sir. And if anyone asks in person, we'll say no guest by that name. Rest easy. I set the receiver down. From the window, I watched the silver pickup roll past without slowing. No one knocked. Only the metal hinge breathed a little when the wind drew down the hall. I sat, opened the legal pad, and wrote a line under stop. Love coddling. I added a reminder. Marla 9, bring binder, bring USB, print confwaz, and underlined it. I closed the notebook and looked at my wife's frame on the table. The burned edge of the cutting board in the photo I took last week like a marker. What's already scorched can't be patched by pretending. It has to be cut back, sanded smooth, given a new use. I clicked off the lamp. In the quickening dark, I could feel the current had changed course. Money wasn't flowing the old direction anymore. If money is the blood of an abusive family, then tonight I'd bandaged a main artery. By the bed, the digital clock ticked. The AC hummed its even breath. I shut my eyes, and behind my lids a tiny red dot still glinted. Not from the phone anymore, but from the feeling that I'd set a decent boundary for myself. Monday morning, sunlight thin as wax paper slipped through the curtains of room 12 at the Pine Lodge. I pulled the case file close. A manila folder with multicolored tabs, a labeled USB tucked beneath a small slip that read, Rec serve or leave master. Cloud synced. The coffee had gone cold, its steam no more than a single hair. I noted hour 8:07 in my notebook, left the motel, and swung by the diner on any third saint. I called the first creditor from the landline next to the jar of brown sugar. I kept my voice even, the words like a latch sliding into the strike. I am the sole owner of 2080 Cedar Bend Drive. Evan Hale has no ownership and no authorization. Please update your records, stop using my address, send confirmation emails titled Address Correction Completed, just do not contact updated. On the other end, they tried mother's maiden name, date of birth, last four of SSN. I didn't break rhythm. I asked them to authenticate via the email already on file. I didn't plead hardship, I didn't promise payment, and I didn't let the call sink into the soft mud of feelings. I just replayed the same short score. Second call, then a third. By the time the bell above the door went ting, 2 auto replies had landed and 1 human-signed email was waiting with the line, "We have removed your address from contact attempts." The counterprinter spat pages, bottom right stamped 809-21, 09-37, 09-42. I folded each, clipped them into the creditor's logs tab, and added my own slip. Assert owner only. No promise to pay. I texted the HOA president asking for 5 minutes at next week's meeting. Neighborhood security update, address confusion, and how to respond to strangers asking questions. The reply came quick, penciled in at 7:10 p.m. I marked it in my notebook, a neat pencil tick like opening a small valve in my chest. By noon, I walked over to First Cascade Bank. The lobby smelled of new carpet, paper, and toner. Bob Wyatt spotted me, lifted a brow, and waved me to the side counter. Last week, someone called the call center to add an authorized user to your online profile. Name was Evan Hale. Bob lowered his voice. The system blocked it because the security questions failed. We flagged the account. He pulled another file and flipped to the page. And there was a HELOC inquiry against the house in your name. The file wasn't sufficient, so it went nowhere. I'll print our internal interaction notes for you. If you need me to, I'll testify. The cutter went P-tack. The page slid out, time 11:56, sitting at the bottom edge like a small nail. I slipped the note into a sheet protector and into the bank flags tab. Leaving the bank, the glass threw back a man in a gray coat whose shoulders sat straighter than yesterday. I emailed Marla Chen. Attach the bank's internal note. I'll bring the binder by tomorrow. On the concrete, sun diced the sidewalk into bright squares. My heels sounded dry and sure, each step like setting another brick on a new slab. Toward early afternoon, I stopped at the Les Schwab Tire Center to check air pressure. Rubber and grease hung in the air. The impact wrench went pee-tack, pee-tack. The compressor whined and faded. At the far edge of the lot, Evan was talking loud to two men in leather jackets. My dad's losing it. Somebody's egging him on. Elder abuse all over. Cut us off. Abandon the family. Socialreturn. Lena stood behind him, a sheet of paper pinched in her hand, her eyes fluttering like a bird desperate for a door to open. I'm getting the tires checked, I said as I came up, then turned to the two men. I'm Graham Hale. I have paperwork for every dollar I've paid. Does he have paperwork for where his paycheck goes? The compressor died completely, leaving a thin silence like dust. Evan gave a hard nasal laugh, tossed out, not normal. I didn't pick it up. I counted like reading a list. 1. I wired $120,000 down payment into escrow on 0614. 2. Mortgage auto pay was set by me and canceled immediately. Con Fapuri 6D1 FA2. 3. 2480 Cedar Bend Drive is titled to me. No co-ownership, no authorization. I cracked the manila just enough to show a fringe of post-it tabs. Everything has copies. Not a story, not a scene. The two men looked at each other. The one in the orange cap said his name was Rick Danner and read off a phone number. The other wiped his hands on an oil-tinged rag and introduced himself as Miguel Ortiz. We heard it, Rick said, slow. A Les Schwab clerk poked his head out to say the lot camera might catch part of it. Ask the manager if needed. I wrote in the notebook, Rick D. Miguel O. Camera? As I stepped back, the paper in Lena's hands trembled. She kept her eyes off mine. I turned away. Behind me, Evan's voice broke apart under the compressor, spooling back up. The concrete bore two sets of tracks, each of us responsible for the line we chose. In the afternoon, Steve Brennan called the room phone. Mr. Hale, last night a young man paced the lot and stopped in front of units 10 to 14 for about 5 minutes. Guest in 11 complained. I saved the exterior camera clip. Time code 1832-1839. Leave me a copy on a USB tonight, I said. Steve agreed, his voice even, like slipping an extra bolt into a door. I logged the time in my notebook, then called the sheriff's office. The operator put me through to Deputy Cole Rivera. I laid it out. The ultimatum recording, the Les Schwab encounter with witnesses, the motel loiterer clip. Rivera told me to keep logging in detail, pull the camera, avoid confrontation. If it repeats tonight or tomorrow, bring the USB and binder in, and he'll walk me through a restraining order. He said he'd file an incident report and flag extra patrol around the Pine Lodge. The AC's hum in the room sounded like a small commitment, quiet but present. That evening, I spread the documents across the wooden table and packed the evidence binder. Tab audio went first. The USB nested in a plastic sleeve with a checksum sheet. The 120K tab held the wire statement and the 0614 confirmation email. The auto payoff tab carried 6D1 FA2 for mortgage, PP72K for electric, NT310 for internet. Insurance off held Geeko's P417. Creditors' logs kept the 3 address correction completed, do not contact updated emails, and my owner assertion only slip. Bank flags housed First Cascade's internal notes on the attempted add-on and the HELOC inquiry. I photographed each tab and saved them in a folder. Daylight counterpunch sure scans. Every click sounded like a tiny stamp hitting paper. Everything lay flat, true, cold, exactly what I needed. The phone buzzed. A new status from Evan. Swayed by others, my dad turned his back on family. Unfilial. The comments were already there. We were there at Les Schwab. He just read documents. Rick D. Another new name. The lot camera has audio. J. Tech. I set the phone down. The truth, numbers and pages, finds its own path without me pushing. I texted the HOA one more line. I'll bring a one-page handout if a stranger asks about an address. 1. Do not confirm. 2. Point to the official channel. 3. Report to HOA. Please print 50. Back came a thumbs up. I closed the plastic cover and pressed my palm to the binder's lid. The surface was cool and level, like a road patched the right way. The phone rang again. Deputy Rivera. If he's around the motel tonight, bring the USB plus binder in the morning. I'll help you file the RO. I went to the window and eased the curtain. Across the street, under the lamp's shadow, a tall shape stood for a beat. The shadow stretched and then slipped into the lot's dark. I let the curtain fall. The plastic soft scrape made a period at the end of the day. By Tuesday, 3 creditor confirmations lay quiet in the binder, and they'd stop calling my address to find him. The numbers had started standing on the right side, and for the first time in years, I felt my back set against something straighter than sorrow. Wednesday morning, I spread the binder across the Pine Lodge's wooden table. Clear sleeves clipping tabs A through H like thin shields. In Section A, a labeled USB held the file Rexserve or Leave Master. Section H waited for the hallway camera transcript. I folded the notebook, wrote the date, then headed downstairs. Steve Brennan, the manager, set a brown envelope on the counter and tapped it lightly. Hallway clip, time code 1832-1839. I also logged a guest safety note. I thanked him. The envelope weighed like the feeling of one more brick laid in the right spot. On the way back, Ben's wind carried the dry cedar smell across the lot. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The cadence was my son's, only colder. I didn't reply. In the room, I plugged in the USB, checked the clip, then filed it under Section H. On screen, a man's shadow paced in front of units 1014. No audio, just the steady motion of impatient feet. I called the sheriff's office. The operator put me through to Deputy Cole Rivera. I summarized cleanly, the ultimatum recorded, a public run-in at Les Schwab with witnesses, the motel clip saved, strange calls. Keep logging by our minute, he said. Pull all cameras. If you want a temporary stopgap, we'll file a TRO first. At the hearing, the court can consider a longer RO. Rivera's voice was calm as a straight-edge line. I set an appointment for the afternoon. By afternoon, the civil division smelled of fresh paper and plastic. Rivera handed me the forms. In the reasons box, I wrote short sentences. The ultimatum, the parking lot loitering, the attacking status post, 2 witnesses, Rick and Miguel, ready to confirm, the Pine Lodge hallway clip. Where there's evidence attached, mark it as an exhibit, Rivera said, setting a stack of clear covers in front of me. Exhibit A, the ultimatum audio. Exhibit H, the motel clip. Exhibit G, witness list with contact info. Keep the language no contact within 500 FT, no electronic contact. I signed. A purple received stamp came down. Rivera stacked the filing square, nodded. I'll walk this to the duty judge right now. If the TRO is signed, it's effective until the hearing. Head back and wait for notice. In the parking lot, my breath ran more even. Paper walls were going up, and I stood straight between them. That evening, a text came from Lena. I'm pregnant. Doctor says stress is dangerous. Please stop. I paused a beat. Then I typed one sentence, staying on the boundary. If there's medical verification, have the clinic bill me directly. I'll pay the provider. Legal limits remain. I called St. Charles Women's Clinic using the billing number on their website. I'd like a conditional payer of record note. If a related bill comes in, I will pay the provider directly, I said. I'm not requesting any medical information. The billing clerk thanked me and confirmed the note. I hung up feeling the weight in my chest ease. Kindness still has a place, but it doesn't move the fence. Thursday morning, I met Marla Chen in the Deschutes County Courthouse lobby. Rain stitched a thin line on her coat. Her voice was crisp. We walked the eviction packet, deed copy in my name, event log, a photo of the front with the house number, a description of the broken verbal agreement. "You'll choose service by sheriff to keep it clean," Marla said, adding a pink sheet to the top. "If they respond, we get a hearing. If not, it's 30 days from the serve date." Clerk Jeannie at the intake window slid the metal clip across and counted. The thunk of the stamp hit the paper like a small hammer. "Filed," she said, and wrote a case number at the top right. I looked at the dark ink and felt my palms cool. The eviction had a number, a date. For the first time in months, what held my house wasn't endurance. It was order. Leaving the courthouse, I stopped at FedEx office. The inkjet hummed. I printed a one-page handout, lean timeline, 5 pieces of evidence. A audio, B $120,000, C auto payoff, E creditor confirmations, F bank flags. Each line had a receipt and number and timestamp. I flagged the binder with Post-its in the order I'd speak. In the test booth, I plugged in the USB and played a 6-second excerpt. "Serve my family or leave." The speakers let the words serve and leave swing shut like 2 doors. I cut it there, leaving a brief echo in my head. From the lot, I called Ms. Perez, the HOA president. "I'd like 10 minutes at the top of Saturday's meeting for neighborhood safety and property update." 7 p.m. at the Park Pavilion," she said. "We've got a projector and screen. Sound check at 6:30. I'll put you first on the agenda." "I'll email the deck and agenda now," I said. "Thank you." The confirmation landed in my inbox. "You're first on the agenda." I attached a 10-slide deck. Slide number 2 was a screenshot of the $120,000 wire. I looked at that familiar number once more. One last time before it became a public puzzle piece. As I pulled out, kids practicing throws on the field across the street made a faint rhythm, like a small town's groundwater adjusting itself. Late afternoon, my phone pinged. TRO granted. The PDF opened with temporary restraining order, centered, no contact within 500 FT, in bold hearing date at the footer. I printed it and clipped it with the incident number Rivera sent along. His follow-up text came soon after. "Papers served." He raised his voice but left. I requested extra patrols. I thumbed back, "Thank you," then set the phone face down. Outside the window, wind lifted the tall grass once, then set it down. Friday morning, I brought the binder back to the courthouse. At the civil window, Jeannie handed me a large manila envelope stamped in red, "Service by Sheriff." "You keep this set," she said. "If there's a contested response, we'll send a notice of hearing." I nodded, the sound of pages sliding like a light rain. On the way home, I stopped at the HOA pavilion. Park staff were testing the grills. Coals red, a thin thread of smoke, the smell of barbecue still in the imagining stage. A tech plugged in the mic. "Check 1, 2, 1 to 2. I noted outlets, cable runs, projector placement, entry paths. Everything simple, functional. Exactly the way I wanted to tell it. Few words, right places, with evidence. At noon, another text came from Lena. "I'm scared. Doctor says stress isn't good." I kept my hands over the keyboard for 2 seconds, then sent the exact same line. "I will pay the provider directly if there's an official request from the clinic. Legal boundaries remain." Nothing added, nothing removed. The message sat still like a nail-set flush into wood. By evening, I sat back at the Pine Lodge and counted the closes from the last 3 days. The filed stamp on the eviction, the granted on the TRO, the "you're first on the agenda" email from the HOA, and the 6:30 sound check. The paper walls were up. Inside them, I felt a spine of steel, not from stubbornness, but because I was finally leaning on rules instead of endurance. My inbox lit again. Full attendance expected. Projector confirmed. Perez. Through the window, I could see the park strung with lights, an igloo cooler nested by the table leg. White table runners laid down the pavilion. Someone ticked a burner on. A blue flame licked the pan's bottom. I closed the binder and slipped the USB into my chest pocket. 7 p.m. tomorrow. The court stamps had said their part. The rest belonged to string lights and a microphone waiting to go live. I arrived at the pavilion at 6:30, just as the fairy lights blinked on, and the smell of BBQ smoke slipped into the sound of kids looping circles over chalked concrete. Ms. Perez held a clipboard, a Sharpie tied on a string, clicking lightly with her steps. Beside the igloo cooler, a tray of ribs was still resting, the grill mouth breathing thin smoke. I tested the mic. Check 1, 2. The portable speakers jumped, loud enough to hear, soft enough not to swamp the neighbors' dinners. On the long, white-covered table, I stacked the one-page handouts in neat piles and set the black binder beside them. The USB sat in my chest pocket. Deputy Cole Rivera was already there. Dark blue shirt, nameplate on, a thin envelope in hand. He gave me a small nod, his look as steady as streetlights just coming on. At 7, Ms. Perez tapped the mic head. Folks, before we start the BBQ, we've got a safety and property update. Graham will present for 10 minutes. Questions at the end, okay? Low murmurs, the shuffle of forks and spoons. I stepped up, took a long breath, and felt my spine straighten like a yardstick between two paper walls. I'm going to present 5 pieces of evidence, I said, voice carrying to the back row. No arguing on the spot. Questions at the end. In your hands is the timeline with reference numbers. Ms. Perez had 2 teens pass the handouts down the benches. The papers moved like a small wave. I plugged in the USB and the screen lit. First slide, the tiny words Exhibit A in the corner, and beneath, reek, serve, or leave, master, redacted. I hit play, 8 seconds. Serve my family or leave. My son's voice hit the speakers like a stone dropped in water. No one spoke. A tiny O rolled through the benches, then settled, as if everyone swallowed the same wisp of smoke. Next slide, a screenshot of the $120,000 wire into escrow, date and time, clean as glass. Bottom right marked, receipt number 2, 06 14 1042. This was the down payment I sent, I said. The receipt is in the file. Below, a gray redaction bar covered the account number. Third slide, the mortgage auto pay schedule under my name. The last 24 lines marching in a straight column. Corner tag Conef Charter 61 FA2. I set it, I canceled it. The date and time are here, I said, pointing to the bottom, where effective immediately sat in small type. Fourth slide, a photo of the bank's interaction note. The line attempted add-on to online profile, rejected, bolded. The contact name blacked out. This is a system red flag. Someone tried to add a name to my online profile and got blocked. I didn't look toward the back. I just said numbers and pointed to paper. Fifth slide, 3 emails titled, Address correction completed, you do not use. My address for Mr. E.H. Bottom right showed EAR 921 0937 0942. Creditors have corrected the address. My house is no longer the place to leave messages for someone else. A small sniff. A child asked her mom, "Is it done?" Then went quiet. Sixth slide. A scanned filed stamp on the eviction and TRO. Granted in bold. Hearing date at the footer. This is the legal boundary, I said briefly. Respect is enough. Plastic chairs creaked. At the back row, Evan shot to his feet. He's confused. Someone's putting him up to this. He abandoned his family. His voice sliced the projection like a blind knife. Deputy Rivera took 1 step forward, his hand still on the envelope. Mr. Hale, he said into the mic, voice level, there is an active temporary restraining order. No direct or electronic contact within 500 feet. Move to the far end of the area or leave the event now. Violation will result in arrest. The whispering died the way a fan clicks off. Evan froze for a beat, glanced around, then retreated slowly, shoulders pumping. Lena followed, head down, hands clenched together, as if holding a secret that kept slipping through her palms. Miss Perez nodded and passed the mic back to me. Questions? I said. Tom from the hardware store raised a hand. How long did you pay? 5 years, I said. The principal items were school, wedding, down payment, auto insurance, utilities, and groceries when needed. The specifics are on the timeline. I kept it at that. No litany, no color. Tom nodded, his hand resting on his thigh like he'd set a hammer down. Mrs. Henderson from the church mail team spoke toward the mic. I heard it myself at the tire lot last week. Mr. Graham read numbers and showed paper. No cussing, I'll testify. Her words were dry and straight like lines on a community board. A middle-aged man in a Cascade auto polo lifted his hand. I'm Dalton on Sycamore. We'll open an internal review on debt issues and public behavior affecting the brand. That's company business, not a neighborhood matter. A scatter of nods like stakes thumping into dirt. My longtime neighbor Ruth Patterson raised her voice. That night I heard shouting and saw patrol cars twice. If the court needs it, I'll sign an affidavit. She spoke and set a hand on my shoulder as if placing a brick on a wall already standing. Questions thinned out. No one circled back to unfilial. No one said elder abuse. People looked at the screen, at the CONF foreign codes in the corners, the way you watch a water gauge settle. Ms. Perez smiled and closed the agenda item. Thank you, Graham. Food's open. Help yourselves. Tongs clicked. The smell of ribs lifted. Kids spilled onto the grass. Chalk stars sat crooked on the concrete. I pulled the USB from the projector and slipped it into my chest pocket. In my head, the scorched edge cutting board from the old kitchen flashed. The dark brown surface with a black crescent like time's burn. On the day I hand over the keys, I'll set it there, I thought, and closed the binder. The string lights threw flecks over the plastic cover like a dark lake catching light. When the crowd thinned, Lena came over. Her eyes were red, her voice smaller than the breeze. I'm sorry. I don't know who to trust anymore. She glanced toward the shadow of Evan standing behind a maple trunk. In the garage, there's a second phone of Evan's and a POA draft. I don't really get it, but there's a fake stamp, half-filled forms. I'll hand it over. She reached into her tote and took out a small zip bag, a SIM, a chip-cheap phone, a few pages with power of attorney, draft at the top, blurry ink, a handwritten label scrawled, garage, second phone, POA draft. I didn't say thank you. I just nodded, holding the bag between two fingers like a shard of glass. Give it straight to the deputy, I said quietly. Lena nodded without lifting her eyes. Deputy Rivera was already beside us, as if his steps had been written into the plan. He opened a chain of custody log, noting the time, place, person surrendering, and description. I'm taking custody, he said, sliding the zip into an envelope, sealing it, and signing across the seam. Tomorrow at 9 or so a.m., Mr. Graham and Ms. Lena come to the sheriff's office. We'll examine everything by the book. A light wind stroked the pavilion and set the string lights into a field of dots. I looked around the park. The grills banked low, a Costco sheet cake half gone, the white plastic knife still streaked with frosting, the HOA clipboard sprawled beside the Sharpie on its string. The rest of the evening drifted back to what a BBQ is: meat, laughter, kids squinting through smoke. While my story stepped off the rumor mill and stood squarely on paper. By the time I left the pavilion, Evan's shadow was gone from the maple. At my feet, the kid's chalk made a curved arrow, its tip pointing toward Cedar Bend. I tucked the binder tight against my chest and felt it weigh just right. Tomorrow, the truth won't be on a screen. It'll be in the file. Sunday morning, the fluorescent lights at the sheriff's office threw a flat, paper-like glow. Deputy Cole Rivera set the zip bag on the metal table, flipped open the chain of custody log, and read the time and place of receipt aloud. I signed in the box for surrendering party. Lena signed in the box for supporting party, her hand trembling just enough for the pen tip to skim the line's edge. We're opening the bag, Rivera said. He cut the seal and laid each item out like chess pieces. A cheap chip phone, a tiny SIM taped over, 3 power of attorney draft, pages freckled with sweat at the margins. A detective at the next desk rolled over, pulled on gloves and brought a camera up. Shutter ticks like staple snaps as he shot each item. On the phone screen, once it had enough charge, an icon for a betting app blinked. The detective opened messages, numbers, promises to pay, due dates. A thread popped up where I saw my home address used as a mailing address. Note, misuse of address, the detective said softly. He flipped into email and found a POA draft photographed off paper, the forged signature clumsy enough that part of it wandered off its line. Possible forgery, he added, as calm as reading the weather. Rivera labeled each item with an evidence tag, marking E01 for the phone, E02 for the SIM, E03 for the POA drafts. I'll route this set to Assistant DA Jensen, he said. As for the RO, with this chain of evidence and the loitering behavior, a long-term order is nearly certain. He paused a beat so I could breathe in. We may also open a forgery/attempted fraud investigation. You'll get updates. I nodded, no commentary. The papers had been speaking well enough for me. As he sealed the evidence envelope, Rivera looked to Lena. Thank you for surrendering it. From here on, all contact goes through us. Lena nodded, eyes swollen and tired, but with something in her look that resembled a decision already made. That noon, I went back to the Pine Lodge, opened the binder, and added one sheet. E01, E02, E03. Logged, transferred to ADA. The ballpoint clicked softly over the plastic cover. I shut it. Court was tomorrow. Monday, the civil courtroom was cool and smelled like nothing but fresh paper. The judge paged the file and looked down the list of exhibits. A through H. Do you want to play an audio clip? She asked. I nodded. Rivera set the USB on the clerk's desk. 6 seconds. Serve my family or leave. The volume was just enough. No dramatic push. It was simply the truth passing through the room like a shadow. My attorney, Marla Chen, restated the timeline and presented prints. Creditor emails correcting the address, the bank's attempted add-on interaction note, a summary of the incident report, the motel hallway clip. I didn't look around. I looked at the folder's corner where the evictions filed stamp sat dark, like a plate of iron. The long-term restraining order is granted, the judge said after a few minutes. Terms, no contact, direct or electronic, 500 feet, effective. She read the dates cleanly. Eviction is procedurally proper, vacant by deadline. She wrote a line into the order and signed. The clerk fed the paper through the embosser. The raised seal rolled up like a small wave. I took the sheet and felt the real weight of something made of wood pulp and ink. Leaving the courthouse, Ben's sky was deep blue. I drove to the empty house one last time. The door opened with a sigh, the air faint with old wood and soap. Sun angled through the window and laid a hand on the kitchen. There, the scorched edge cutting board sat in its rightful spot, a black crescent where time had put down a finger and forgotten to lift it. From my shirt pocket, I took the brown leather frame. My wife smiling, tilting her shoulder toward a pot of geraniums. I propped the photo against the utensil jar, then set the key ring on the board. Metal touched wood with the smallest clink. I stood still and let the sound expand through the kitchen like a ripple. Hey, love, I said under my breath. Today our house is still a home. It's just changing the owner of what deserving means. When the car pulled up at the curb, I lifted the keys in the photo and stepped outside. Director Dana Ortiz of the Veterans Housing Program came with Ms. Perez and Pastor Ellis. Ruth Patterson followed, cradling a little camera. 3 hand-sized flags on the steps clicked lightly in the wind. Mr. Graham, Dana said, offering a hand, we finalized everything. This house will be divided into 3 units for veteran families in transition. We're going to keep this community strong. Good on, I said. This house learned keep a long time ago. I put the keys in Dana's palm. Ruth raised her camera and clicked. The shutter sounded like a stitch being tied, a tiny marker sewing the past to the present. Ms. Perez read a single line from the agenda. This home now serves veterans, Pastor Ellis said a brief prayer, light on adjectives, heavy on verbs. Keep, serve, men. We signed the transfer on a folding table set on the porch. My name, Dana's name, witness signature blocks. A received stamp came down. Purple ink dried fast in the sun. Neighbors came together in a loose ring. Some clapped, some just stood and nodded. I glanced through the kitchen window. The scorched cutting board was still there, a trace of time in a story now closed. The gathering thinned. On the lawn, kids collected the flags and tucked them back into a planter. I sat on the steps a moment longer, and then Lena came up. No Evan, the RO kept him somewhere else, exactly where it should. Lena stopped 2 steps down, hands knotted, eyes red. I filed a statement on the second phone in the POA, she said, voice hoarse. I also filed for legal separation. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to know if there's any chance to do my part over. I nodded and waited for a few breaths of wind to move through the pines. I have 4 conditions, I said slowly, giving each word a place to land. 1, a public admission. 1 letter to the HOA and 1 public post. Tell the truth, no blaming. 2, 12 therapy sessions. Bring proof when you finish. 3, symbolic repayment, $50 a week for 1 year. Not for the money, but for discipline. 4, no petitions for exemptions and no requests for the house. The house has a new owner in the public sense. Lena swallowed. I can do that. She looked into the house one last time. I know I'm sorry isn't enough. Good, I said. The words I need aren't sorry. They're the therapy schedule and the first receipt. I paused. Forgiveness isn't reopening the door, but respect can be rebuilt by action. She nodded stronger this time. Thursday, 5 p.m., session number 1. She recited like a small incantation. I'll send the HOA letter tonight. Toward early afternoon, I slid my car keys back into my shirt pocket, said my goodbyes to Dana, Ms. Perez, and Pastor Ellis. I drove to the Old Mill District and turned onto the small road along Tumalo Creek. My new cabin has a wood porch and a window that looks onto water glittering like a strip of silver fabric. Inside a recliner by the bookcase, the kettle murmuring. I set my wife's photo on the shelf and wondered if she'd have loved the stream's voice. Probably, she used to say, the sound of water is how a heart puts itself back in order. The phone buzzed. An email from Veterans Housing, a photo of the first veteran family opening the door. The man hugging a little girl, the woman smiling shyly. Behind them, my kitchen doorway. No, theirs, with sunlight slanting across where the scorched board sits. I zoomed in and saw the black crescent still there, a reminder that the kitchen is where love gets tested. A follow-up text from Lena. Sent the HOA letter. Therapy session number 1 scheduled Thursday, 5 p.m. Thank you for giving me a chance to repair, not to beg. I typed, received, and set the phone beside my wife's frame. Evening came and the creek changed color. A breeze moved through the curtain carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass. I could almost hear a knife scraping carrots on a board years ago, Martha whistling some unimportant tune. I smiled and didn't try to grab the memory. I let it pass like water. A small ding. Bank notification. Payment received, $50. First symbolic repayment. I looked at the neat little number, then tapped a short note. Coffee, Saturday. Sitting longer with the sound of water, I thought, sometimes we don't reopen the old door. We just leave the porch light on, so people who know how to come back with the truth can find their way. If you enjoyed the story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about it in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left.